Last year, Gartner estimates that American companies spent $75.4 billion on cybersecurity, most of which was earmarked for vendor products in general. $75.4 billion. Who here thinks that we get $75 billion of security? Yeah, I definitely don't either. But I think that's really a core challenge that every cybersecurity team needs to take on, right? It's our job to take the money that we're given by our companies and figure out how to invest it in the most efficient way possible in order to get security for everybody, right? And I think it's thinking about the problem a little bit differently this way that can enable us to make some really cool decisions. So when we think about spending this money, there's usually a couple of options that come up first. So the first one's buying, and everyone's heard the story, right? We generate a set of requirements, we think about those requirements, we go to the market, we survey the market, they say, oh, look, awesome vendor products, we kind of want some of them, and occasionally that works out pretty well. The next major option that we really like to talk about is the build model, right? So maybe we've gone to the market and they don't meet our requirements. Or we think that we're just this awesome group of engineers and we can solve the problem so much more efficiently than what the market says that we should go ahead and build it ourselves. But the really important thing in either of these cases that can sometimes get lost is that we have to not show up coming up with the product we want first. Right? We need to show up understanding what we need to get to, talk to the market, think about building things to figure out how we get there, not because we want this new shiny appliance that we plug in, or not because we want to build a really awesome new system. In the case of buying, right, I like to think of this as going to the grocery store hungry, right? We show up and we know we want to buy something, but we don't know exactly what it is, but we have some money and we need to buy things, so we end up buying a handful of different things, we plug them all in and we say, you know, this doesn't even really do what we want. In the case of building, it's kind of like a widget factory, right? We want to build one widget, but instead of just making that one widget really well, we make a whole system that builds lots of widgets in different ways, but doesn't really get us what we wanted at the day. Open source straddles the gap here, right? And it gives us a mechanism by which we can go out and get something and use it, but it falls vulnerable on the front end of we end up picking up open source projects because we're excited about the idea of open source. And similarly, when we try and include them, we often will build against them and we'll get so excited about the features that are there that we pick a couple of features and then we have all this other stuff kind of hanging around. But what I'm here to talk about is another option, right? What if there was a fourth option? Or a whole bunch of other options of ways we could deal with the market, go in and try and create a better solution fundamentally, right? So I think it's important at this point to have a little bit of background. So as was mentioned, I work at Uber and I'm on the engineering security team there, and one of the things that I'm most proud of about our team is we take a really engineering approach to everything we do from a security point of view. Across our engineering security team, we have 80 engineers, and we build a lot of tools. But one of the things that I've really learned since being here is that having an engineering mindset doesn't always mean building something, right? A really great example of this is the case study that I'm here to talk about today. So our security response team, who respond to incidents, they make detections, all those kind of things, they had this need that was kind of growing as our security team was growing, as the company was growing, where they need to be able to triage all of the alerts that are coming in live. So the basic idea here, right, is we have all of our logs, we have context, we have feeds that we listen to, we understand what's happening in our networks, all this fun stuff, and when something doesn't look quite right or we get an interesting alert, then we need to surface that and have an analyst make a decision. But what we realized about this challenge was as our team grew and as Uber grew and as things changed, this problem was only going to get worse, right? This isn't one of those problems that it's going to stay about there and it's going to be fine. We're going to have more and more things happening, and we're going to need to be able to make decisions faster and faster. In addition, when we thought about this problem, we really needed a tool that was nimble and flexible, right? We pride ourselves on being able to move really fast, change things, change our fundamental stacks, use new vendors, and if we end up getting a product and bringing it in that is more stagnant than we are, we're gonna have to end up switching it right back out at the end of the day and doing something else that's different. So we went out to the market, we had built this awesome list of great things we wanted, how we thought about the problem, what we wanted, and of course there was nothing, because this is the way this works for us. So we're like, okay, we could build something. But what really hurt and what stuck in our craw was this company called Sanam Cyber. So when we talked with Sanam Cyber, they didn't meet all of our requirements. I wouldn't even say met most of them, but their core system, the platform they had created, it was built a lot like how we would build our system, right? And we weren't thinking about it like that, but largely as a byproduct of their transparency, we realized that that was actually a kind of cool way of looking at a vendor. It's worth taking a second, though, to talk about exactly what Phantom is, because I think it's useful for this. So Phantom is an alert orchestration platform, basically, right? There's all different kinds of things happening. They can take these inputs, reason about them, add context, take automated actions, and then the kind of thing that we were really advocating for and generated a lot of our requirements but wasn't there at the time was this single pane of glass that then allowed us to, for some small percentage of the alerts, view them, enrich them, and make a decision. So to kind of get back to the piece, right? So we had this company, and we thought their product looked a lot like what we would build, but wasn't all the way there, and didn't necessarily even have a business plan where they wanted to get to where we were talking about. But we took a step back and said, okay, there was the market. We understand what the market is. We understood pretty well what a build of this product would look like from having built a similar thing at a different employer. And we came up with the following evaluation. So if we were to buy it, we believed that we could basically cobble together a handful of different vendor products and get to about 80% of the requirements. We'd pay about $1.2 million a year in licensing, which we could amortize monthly, but still a fair amount yearly to pay out in licensing for vendor products that only get you 80% of the way there. There'd be about 240 hours of one-time engineering costs to glue all this together and try and make it seem like a reasonable system that maybe wouldn't fall over constantly. And then about 150 hours a year of fixing it when it falls over constantly and doing all the other stuff. So to put alongside that, we also did an analysis of what our build would have been. And as I mentioned, we had some previous knowledge about what this would have probably looked like. We would have gotten to 100% of the requirements. That's one of the awesome things about building. You get to build at least what you think you want that day. We wouldn't have to pay licensing costs, but there was a very large upfront engineering cost, right? We got to pay that all up front. We don't get continuous changing to the product. And we're going to have a much higher yearly maintenance cost. For this particular product, there's a much higher one because there's a lot of integrations with outside tooling, right? So we would need to, every time that someone changed their API of how you pull a threat, or how you download more information, or how we service up something, we got to go update our APIs for them and keep in sync and do all those pieces, right? So I think these are useful numbers, but what's more useful when you think about them from a business point of view for me is what the total cost of ownership is. So that's what this graph represents. Over a 3-year time period, what the total cost of ownership for buy versus build is, right? We have a much higher initial investment because we got to build the system, but then we have a very low burn. Evens out at about 2 years or so. On the buy side, much lower investment, but a much sharper piece. And after 2 years, we're going to keep paying a lot more for that. At the end of the day, when I look at this graph, though, and I look at the numbers we're talking about here, right, these both still suck, right? Like, I don't want either of these. I'm not happy with this, right? I don't want to go to anyone and say, like, yeah, look, our solution, it's going to cost like this, and have, like, no, I'm not proud of that. So we stepped back again, and we said, well, this is Phantom's architecture, and it looks nice enough. It doesn't have all of our things, but it's actually a lot like our architecture. Maybe we could just work with them in some way, right? And to be clear, right, I'm not saying that at the time that we started working with them, or even when we contemplated this, that they met most of our requirements. They didn't. But the way they had built it, the bones of the system, right, the core of what they chose, was actually about 90% the same of what our MVP would have been. So we said, well, what if they worked with us, right? What if we just went and had the conversation? Hey, no, this isn't your business plan. No, this isn't exactly what you're doing, but we think it's a pretty good idea. You should talk to us. That'd be pretty cool. And I want to take a moment to step back here, though, and talk about this before we go a little more into the case study, because I think it's powerful and it's really important, right? What if we change the way that we go out and talk to startups in the industry, right? What if instead of looking at how many requirements they meet of our products, we look at how their products are built and how similarly it is built to how we would build it? And we take a little bit of that responsibility as enterprises onto our shoulders and go out and try and change the market. instead of complaining about all the point solutions that don't meet all of our requirements that we have to cobble together and work through these pieces. Because I think if we're really serious about doing security, right, to go back to the first slide, this is really important, right? If we're not just checking boxes to try and meet requirements because a regulator or someone told us that's what we had to do, if we really want to change security and do these pieces, we have to figure out every way to most efficiently spend our dollar. We need to be able to go partner with the market, spin things around, find the most interesting places, and invest and change things and try and make a difference here. So to get back to our case study a little bit, I think it's important to look at why we chose Phantom, right? And why this was a potentially good partner for us to try this idea of really engaging and moving the market. So the first, which we talked about some here already, is that their core system was implemented like we would, had the same foundation, had the guts. But I think you also have to have the business pieces around it, right? So the second big piece for us was that they actually had a really detailed API that kind of from the start, they were making a core part of their product. They viewed themselves as a platform. I think this is super important and critical because a lot of vendor solutions out there, they view themselves as a product, right? You plug it in, it does these things, it magically works. But when you turn that a little bit and you view yourself as a platform to start, to build on top of, the potential there is huge. The third one for us was actually their UX UI engineers. We started talking with them, we were able to give some feedback, help them understand our user stories. They were making big changes to the UX UI that made sense, looked great, and added efficiency. I think this is a really important one that's dropped a lot in security, and I've been trying to pay more attention to, because at the end of the day, security engineers just write really bad UIs. Like, I'm sorry, like I'd like a jaunt through IDA Pro as much as anyone else, trying to coerce it to do exactly what you want, but it's just not efficient, right? And at the end of the day, that's what we're here to talk about in this talk, is doing it as efficiently as possible so we can get to the best result. In particular for this problem, right, UX was very important because we had this awesome pane that we were going to be exposing to our analysts, and more or less their productivity maps to how well this pane lets them triage things, add context, and take actions. And understanding that early and picking a company that took that seriously was a pretty critical step in it. So this is kind of the heads down version of this Phantom product that we think is awesome and works well in this case study. But more what I wanted to talk about here is how we can generalize that, right? We saw these three pieces that when we think about the problem I walked you through made sense. But what are the things that if we wanted to apply this to a broader subset, right? That we wanted to try and apply this to every challenge we would need to do. And I think it breaks down into three main things. So the things we got to look for in these companies, and in ourselves really in this partnership, is transparency, communications, and flexibility. So from a transparency point of view, this looks like both sides being really open from the start, right? We all have to walk in and understand what each other wants out of this relationship, where we're all going to, what the real state of the world is, right? What am I actually looking to buy? What do you actually have? Where are things developed? And how do we all get to the finish line we want to get to together? So some guidances that we found for doing that really well that I liked. Some things to do out the door. Perform a gap analysis together. For those who don't know what a gap analysis is, a gap analysis is really simple, right? You look at the requirements that you're looking to get, you match those requirements up against what's there currently, and then you figure out what the path to get there is. I think the cool part about thinking about a gap analysis in this particular model is that because we're looking at it from an engineering first mindset of how the system is implemented, these requirements are kind of a secondary piece. Yes, we need to get there. Yes, we need to talk about them. But the conversation we're facilitating is how we build that together. The second piece is sharing the business use in the environment, right? The same way that we really want to understand how the product is stacking up, how we need to get there in order to get the requirements, we need our partner company to understand exactly how we're going to use it in our systems and what that environment's going to look like, right? Are we going to employ it into our own data centers? How are we going to use it? What are the success metrics behind this? Because if they don't really understand those things at the core, they can't be held to that success. I think the close corollary to this is hiding behind operational secrecy. This is something that's so easy to do in security, right? We're looking at it, we're like, oh, we do all the secret squirrel things over here, right? Like, don't look over here, it's great. But when you're really partnering with a company and they need to know how you're using their product, we can't hide behind that. We have to find ways to pull up that veil. In my experience, the vast majority of what we do actually can be shared with some work, right? If you need to log something, right, figure out how to pull an action log and tokenize out all of the strings, right? Work through all these different cases so that we can manage to share as much of what's happening without putting any of our core data at risk, right? Similarly on that, we need to make sure that sales doesn't sell the development cycle, right? We're trying this partnership here where we're walking in and saying, hey, we really need you to pivot to here. It's gonna be great. We're gonna make the whole market better. We're gonna be actively involved in investing in you. But at the same time, we need to make sure that we're being respectful of their sales cycle, right? They do need to make money at the end of the day, and they're a company, and we're a partner in this, but we can't have that person saying, okay, we gotta get here by this next week, and then you're done talking to us because we're gonna go do something else over here. I think this is a hard one, but it's an important one. So transparency is great, but without communication, transparency doesn't really get us anywhere, right? We're standing there willing to share, but we're not yet sure how to share. So some important things here, and they're simple things, but I find so often in the enterprise, they're not done things. Be candid, right? Just be straightforward with these people on both sides. This is what we need, this is why, this is the definition of success. Actually, how we judge success on this is that our CISO is happy, right? If that's the case, tell them that from the start. If it's this metric needs to move to this, tell them that. Share that regularly with them, help them understand it. Similarly, on their side, we need someone who's willing to tell us, there's no way we can do that, right? Our business model will never let us pivot to that. Or we don't have the technical expertise to implement something like that, right? Everyone has to be straightforward, open, and honest throughout this. The corollary to that is being accessible, right? In the case of Phantom and ours partnership, this meant sitting in their Slack channel and going over to their office, right? But I think there's a lot of other ways you can see this, right? It's having cell phone numbers. It's just showing up at communal kind of hackathon events, right? Any way that you can make yourself as accessible as possible on both sides is really what's important here. The other side of this, and we've talked on this a little bit already, is not masking things in business format, right? It's very easy to want to put all of your requirements into a contract and say that you'll spend 200 hours trying to move the product forward, and that's really entirely against what we're trying to do here, right? We're trying to get both sides to buy in and invest so that we're doing the right thing for the market and for this individual case. You also have to not forget your partners, right? That's kind of the cool thing about this whole thing is that we get to go into it together as partners and we get to work on it, but at the same time, that means that you have to not always think about yourself. You have to think about how this is going to get to the best end result. And sometimes that means doing the immediate thing for yourself, and sometimes that means just being excited that their product's awesome and it's getting a lot of traction. The final piece is flexibility. So we have a lot of transparency, we're happy with that, we're communicating all the time, but two disparate organizations that are never going to be 100% aligned are trying to come together. And in our case, and I think in a lot of cases that can be successful, one of them is an agile small startup, and one of them is an enterprise, right? They're gonna have to figure out some interesting ways to work together there. The things to do here, design the system together, right? This is in line with our gap analysis. Show up, understand the state of it, figure out what the path is to get there together. Sprint to close those gaps, right? As we find each one of those things, each side needs to put in effort that day to go try and do it, that week to go try and do it, not this is going to get prioritized on our Q2 OKRs and we'll manage to get there and it'll be wonderful, right? No, but both sides need to be completely invested in this and need to be going there as fast as possible. Neither side can lay out hard and fast requirements, right? We're fundamentally changing something here. We're changing a business model, we're changing the way we're working at this, we're changing a product. We got to get there together, and laying out hard and fast requirements and not being flexible isn't going to allow that to happen. And the final piece on the enterprise side is making sure that contracts don't get in the way. As an enterprise, coming up with ways to have clauses that your legal department is okay with the fact that you're working on IP that's going to be owned by a startup and has to be this, or from the startup's point of view, that they're going to be working on making feature additions to a product that don't directly correlate to a contract, right? You got to find some creative ways to do this and help build that trust and work through it. But I think it's worth it. So this is all great, but how do we judge success? So here are the two columns that we spoke about before, right? The buy versus build. I'm going to put a third column up, and this is the partner piece. So via our partnership, we were able to get to 100% of the requirements, a very small yearly piece coming in. 1,000 hours or so is what we estimate as our one-time cost. This is a consulting cost, basically, for us to be going in, providing that expertise, and then about 100 hours a year. So these numbers are great, but I think to drive it home, I want to put it up against the total cost of ownership, right? Because this is your sell slide, right? This is your awesome. So what do we look like at 2 years? What do we look at 3 years? And you can see it's dramatically lower, right? Our initial investment is so much less because part of what we're investing is our expertise and our market knowledge and our care. Our continued payment is actually very similar to it if we did own it, but we get to do more interesting things there. I think it's a pretty clear success from this, and definitely something I was excited about. And it speaks to how well this went, but I don't want to pigeonhole us overly into this, right? This isn't supposed to be the one way new way you can interact with it. I'm trying to propose here that there's a lot of new ways that we can go out and seek the market, right? But it's the enterprise's responsibility to enact this change and work through this change and change the market and vote with your dollars, right? Just showing up and saying, vendors aren't doing what I want and I'm upset about that isn't going to be how we're going to get to a better place together. And I think if we really all approach these problems with an engineering mindset and we truly embrace and partner with startups, new paradigms can be born. Thank you.